Welcome to Paranormal Pages. Let's get straight into the true scary stories. Story 1. The Haunting of Holloway's. I had always been drawn to the old department store, Holloway's, with its grandiose architecture and nostalgic charm. As a child, I would peer through the glass windows, mesmerized by the intricate window displays, each mannequin poised with an uncanny realism. When I was offered a job there as a night security guard, it felt like a dream come true. Little did I know, this dream would soon morph into a nightmare. The store was a labyrinth of mahogany staircases and polished marble floors, each turn leading to another era. During the day, it bustled with customers and the echoes of laughter, but as night fell, it transformed into a silent, eerie mausoleum. The mannequins, which appeared so innocuous in the daylight, seemed to shift and watch me in the dim glow of the emergency lights. One evening, as I locked up, I noticed something strange. One of the mannequins, a regal figure in an old-fashioned gown, seemed to have shifted slightly. I shrugged it off, blaming my overactive imagination and the play of shadows. However, as I made my rounds, the feeling of being watched grew stronger, a cold prickle crawling up my spine. I must be losing it, I muttered to myself, gripping my flashlight tighter. The store was supposed to be empty, yet every creak of the wooden floors and whisper of the wind outside made my heart race. As I approached the women's clothing section, I froze. There, in the half-light, I saw it. A mannequin's head had turned to face me, its blank eyes staring unblinkingly. I took a step back, my breath hitching. Just then, the silence was shattered by a sound that sent chills down my spine, a soft, deliberate clearing of a throat. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that seemed to dance with malevolent glee. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response came, just the oppressive silence. I forced myself to move, my steps hesitant. As I reached the main display area, the air grew colder. My eyes widened in horror as I saw several mannequins had changed positions, now arranged in a grotesque tableau. One, in particular, stood out, a figure with its hand raised as if to wave, its lifelike eyes glinting in the dim light. Hey! Subscribe for more true scary stories. The air grew heavier, pressing down on me like a tangible weight. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away from the disturbing scene. My flashlight flickered again, casting the mannequin's shadows in twisted, contorted shapes. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. "Who's there?" I repeated, my voice barely more than a whisper. The mannequins remained silent, their porcelain faces frozen in eerie serenity. I scanned the room, my flashlight sweeping over the display cases and clothing racks. As the beam passed over the mirrors lining the walls, I saw it. My reflection wasn't alone. A shadowy figure stood behind me, barely visible in the dim light. I spun around, but there was nothing there. My breath came in shallow gasps as I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. "Pull yourself together," I muttered, gripping the flashlight so tightly my knuckles turned white. I forced myself to continue my rounds, each step echoing through the empty store. As I passed by the children's section, I heard it again, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. I stopped, straining to listen. "Help me." The voice was faint, barely more than a breath. I turned slowly, shining my flashlight into the shadows. There, huddled in the corner, was a mannequin I hadn't noticed before. It was smaller than the others, dressed in a child's outfit, its face twisted in an expression of anguish. The voice seemed to emanate from it, filling the air with a sense of desperation. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. The mannequin didn't respond, but the whispering continued, growing more insistent. "Help me, please." I took a hesitant step closer, my mind racing. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Or was there something more sinister at play? As I reached out to touch the mannequin, the whispering stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the store into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my phone, using its dim light to navigate. The mannequins loomed around me, their expressions seeming to change with each flicker of my flashlight. I stumbled through the store, my mind filled with fear and confusion. As I reached the main entrance, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, shining my light into the darkness. The regal mannequin from earlier stood in the center of the aisle, its hand outstretched as if beckoning me. My blood ran cold as I realized it had moved again. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I bolted for the door, my heart racing. As I burst into the cold night air, I looked back to see the mannequins standing in the doorway, their lifeless eyes following me. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my car, my mind reeling from the night's events. As I sat there, trying to catch my breath, I knew one thing for certain: something was very wrong at Holloway's. And I was determined to find out what. The following day, I couldn't shake the memories of the previous night. My coworkers noticed my unease, but I brushed off their concerns with feigned nonchalance. Holloway's looked innocent in the daylight, bustling with activity and chatter, but I knew better now. There was something lurking beneath its polished facade. Determined to uncover the truth, I spent my lunch break in the archives. The store had a long history, dating back to the early 1900s. Flipping through dusty ledgers and old photographs, I stumbled upon a series of disturbing events. Several employees had gone missing over the decades, their disappearances never solved. The more I read, the more I realized there was a pattern, each incident involving the mannequin displays. I found an old article about a young girl named Emily who had vanished while playing hide-and-seek in the store. Her distraught parents had searched every inch of Holloway's, but she was never found. The article mentioned her favorite hiding spot, the children's section. My mind flashed back to the whispering mannequin and the child's voice pleading for help. Could it be connected? That night, I returned to my post with renewed determination. I made my rounds with extra vigilance, every creak and whisper sharpening my focus. As the store closed and the last of the customers left, I steeled myself for what I might encounter. My heart pounded in anticipation as I approached the children's section. The air grew colder as I stepped into the aisle, the mannequin's eyes seeming to follow my every move. I found the small mannequin from before, still huddled in the corner. "Emily?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Are you here?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the soft whisper returned, more urgent this time. "Help me find them." My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the mannequins' faces. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized what she meant. She wasn't the only one trapped here. I searched the area, looking for anything out of the ordinary. As I moved a display case, I noticed a loose floorboard. My hand shook as I pried it open, revealing a small, hidden compartment. Inside, I found an old, tattered diary. The pages were brittle and yellowed with age, but the writing was still legible. The diary belonged to a former employee named Margaret, who had worked at Holloway's in the 1920s. Her entries were filled with strange occurrences, mannequins moving on their own, voices in the night, and a growing sense of dread. She wrote about a curse placed on the store by a vengeful spirit, trapping the souls of those who died within its walls. Margaret had tried to break the curse but disappeared before she could succeed. As I read her final entry, a sense of dread settled over me. She mentioned a ritual that could free the trapped souls, but it required a personal sacrifice. My heart sank as I realized what I had to do. The thought of leaving Emily and the others trapped here was unbearable. Gathering my courage, I decided to perform the ritual. I gathered the necessary items, a candle, a piece of chalk, and a personal belonging of Emily's that I had found in the hidden compartment. As I prepared the ritual, the store grew colder, the air thick with an oppressive presence. I stood in the center of the children's section, the mannequins forming a silent audience. "Emily," I whispered, lighting the candle. "I'm here to help you." I traced the chalk circle on the floor, reciting the incantation from Margaret's diary. The air crackled with energy, the shadows deepening as I spoke the final words. A sudden gust of wind extinguished the candle, plunging the store into darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I turned to see Emily, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "They're coming," she whispered. "You have to hurry." Before I could react, the mannequins began to move, their lifeless eyes glinting with malevolence. They surrounded us, their hands reaching out, their faces twisted in anger. I knew I had only moments to complete the ritual and free the trapped souls. With trembling hands, I continued the incantation, hoping I wasn't too late. The mannequins closed in, their once porcelain-like faces now twisted with grotesque, almost human-like expressions of anger and sorrow. The air grew colder, and I could feel their malevolent presence pressing in on me, each one a prisoner of the curse. Emily clung to my side, her grip tightening as she whispered, "Please, hurry." My hand shook as I held Emily's locket, an item from the hidden compartment. The final step of the ritual was to offer a piece of my own soul, binding it to the store to break the curse. I recited the incantation from Margaret's diary, my voice wavering but determined. The air around us seemed to thrum with energy, the candle flame flickering as the words left my lips. "Let these souls be free, and take mine in their stead," I whispered, feeling a strange warmth spread through my chest. The mannequins halted, their eyes turning toward me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of recognition, as if they understood the sacrifice I was making. The circle of chalk glowed faintly, casting an ethereal light over the room. A sudden, blinding flash filled the store, and I felt a sharp pain as if my very essence was being torn apart. I cried out, falling to my knees as the energy surged through me. The mannequins stood still, their expressions softening into peaceful calm. Emily's voice echoed in my mind, "Thank you." The light faded, and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a gentle warmth. I looked around to see the mannequins back in their original positions, their faces serene and lifeless once more. Emily was gone, and I could feel the weight of her gratitude in my heart. Just as I began to relax, thinking the ordeal was over, a low, guttural growl reverberated through the store. The ground trembled beneath me, and a dark shadow emerged from the depths of the display area. It took form, a hideous amalgamation of the souls that had been trapped, twisted by years of torment. "You cannot escape," the shadow hissed, its voice a chorus of agony. "You have freed them, but you belong to me now." The realization struck me like a blow to the chest. The curse was broken, but the malevolent force behind it remained. I stumbled to my feet, my mind racing for a solution. The shadow advanced, its tendrils reaching for me. Desperation clawed at my mind as I remembered the diary's final words, "The curse is born of pain and loss. Only through acceptance and forgiveness can it be undone." Taking a deep breath, I faced the shadow. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice steady despite my fear. "I'm sorry for all the pain you've endured. You don't have to hold on to it anymore. Let go, and find peace." The shadow hesitated, its form wavering. For a moment, I saw flashes of the past, lost loves, broken dreams, and countless years of suffering. My heart ached for the souls trapped in this malevolent entity. "You deserve to rest," I whispered, stepping forward. "I forgive you." A piercing scream echoed through the store as the shadow convulsed, its form dissolving into wisps of smoke. The air grew lighter, the oppressive darkness lifting as the entity released its hold. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The store was silent, the mannequins once again mere figures of wood and plaster. As dawn's light filtered through the store windows, I knew my life had changed forever. Holloway's was no longer a place of torment but a resting place for the souls who had been freed. I had faced my fears and emerged victorious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left a part of myself behind. I left Holloway's for the last time, the sun rising on a new day. The store stood as a testament to the power of forgiveness and the resilience of the human spirit. And though I would carry the memories of that night with me forever, I knew I had done the right thing. As I walked away, I heard a soft, familiar whisper in the breeze, "Thank you." Emily's voice, a gentle reminder that in the end, love and forgiveness could conquer even the darkest of curses. Hey! Subscribe for more true scary stories. Story 2. Echoes from the Well. The village of El Silencio was shrouded in an unsettling quietness, a place where the fog clung to the cobblestone streets like ghosts. I had heard the legends about the old well at the village's center, a relic of ancient times said to grant wishes to the desperate and the hopeful. Skepticism had always been my companion, but curiosity tugged at me when I arrived. Perhaps it was the whispered stories of fortunes gained and lost, or the unsettling tales of those who had vanished after visiting the well. Whatever it was, it drew me to the weathered stones and the deep darkness below. As I approached the well, a chill crept up my spine, like icy fingers tracing my vertebrae. The well's stone rim was worn and covered in moss, and the water below was hidden in shadow. My breath fogged the air as I stood there, clutching the small, worn coin in my hand, a relic passed down in my family for generations. The villagers' warnings echoed in my mind, "Be careful what you wish for. The well listens, but it doesn't always grant what you desire." I dismissed their words, thinking them mere superstitions, the kind of tales that kept children awake at night. I tossed the coin into the well, the clink of metal against stone echoing in the silent square. I closed my eyes, whispered my wish, and waited. Seconds passed, then minutes, with nothing but the sound of the wind whistling through the narrow alleys. I felt foolish, standing there, as if expecting a miracle. Just as I turned to leave, a soft splash sounded from the depths. My heart skipped a beat. Curiosity overpowered caution, and I leaned over the edge, peering into the blackness below. To my shock, the coin came hurtling back up, striking the stone beside me with a wet, metallic thud. The dim light of the lanterns revealed it smeared with fresh blood, glistening ominously. My hand trembled as I picked it up, the warm, sticky liquid seeping into my fingers. The well's mouth seemed to gape wider, an unspoken challenge hanging in the air. I felt a strange pull, a compulsion to ask for another wish, despite the horror that churned in my gut. As I stood frozen, the fog thickened around me, muffling the world outside the square. Shadows seemed to dance at the edges of my vision, and a low murmur emanated from the well, like a distant, echoing chant. Panic rose within me, and I stumbled back, the coin clutched tightly in my hand. The village's quiet became oppressive, every creak and whisper amplified in the silence. I backed away, heart pounding, and fled the square, the sensation of being watched never leaving me. The eerie silence of El Silencio seemed to follow, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the bloodied coin haunted my thoughts, and the memory of that murmur gnawed at my sanity. What had I wished for? What had the well granted in return? The answers eluded me, but one thing was clear: the well was not a benevolent force. It was something far darker, an entity that thrived on the fears and desires of the villagers. As the hours crept by, the realization that something had been set in motion, a force beyond my understanding, kept me wide awake. The well had thrown the coin back, and with it, a message I couldn't decipher. But the implications were terrifyingly clear. The next morning, a thick fog hung over El Silencio, even heavier than usual, blanketing the village in a ghostly pallor. Despite the uneasy memory of the previous night, curiosity gnawed at me. I ventured back to the well, determined to uncover the truth behind the strange events. As I walked through the narrow streets, the villagers watched from their windows, eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. They knew. Somehow, they always knew when the well had chosen someone. At the well, I hesitated, the stone rim cold under my fingers. The coin, now cleaned of its gruesome stains, felt heavier in my pocket. I stared into the depths, half expecting to see something staring back. But there was only darkness. I felt a presence, an oppressive weight, as if the air itself had grown denser. A voice broke the silence, startling me. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, barely more than a breath. I spun around, heart racing, to find an old woman standing at the edge of the square. Her face was lined with age, eyes sharp and knowing. "The well takes more than it gives," she continued, her voice low and weary. "Those who come seeking answers find only questions. And those who ask for favors often pay with more than they bargained." I swallowed, trying to mask the fear that twisted in my stomach. "What does it want?" I asked, my voice barely a croak. The old woman shook her head, her expression one of deep sorrow. It wants what it has always wanted, to feed on our fears, our desires. It's a portal, a gateway to something far beyond our world. It sees your wish, twists it, and gives you something you never expected. Something you can't escape. Her words lingered in the air, heavy with implication. Before I could ask more, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the fog as swiftly as she had appeared. Left alone with my thoughts, I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. The well was more than a simple village legend, it was a curse. I had awakened something, and now I needed to understand what. I couldn't shake the feeling that the well had marked me, that its dark tendrils were slowly wrapping around my fate. As the days passed, the fog seemed to grow thicker, the nights darker. Strange occurrences plagued my every waking hour. Shadows moved on their own, flickering just out of sight. I heard whispers in the silence, voices that spoke of secrets long buried. The villagers began to avoid me, their once friendly faces now tight with fear and suspicion. I was an outsider, marked by the well, and they wanted nothing to do with me. One night, as I lay in bed, the room grew unbearably cold. My breath fogged in the air, and the shadows lengthened unnaturally. A faint, rhythmic tapping began, coming from the direction of the well. It was as if something was calling me, beckoning me to return. Heart pounding, I rose from the bed and peered out the window. The fog outside was thick and swirling, yet I could see a faint, ethereal glow emanating from the well's direction. Compelled by an unseen force, I dressed and slipped out into the night. The streets were eerily silent, the air thick with anticipation. As I approached the well, the glow grew brighter, a ghostly light that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. My hand trembled as I reached out to touch the rim, the cold stone sending a shiver up my arm. From the depths, a soft whisper reached my ears, growing louder and clearer with each passing second. It was a voice, familiar yet strange, calling my name. Terrified but unable to resist, I leaned over the well's edge. The glow intensified, and for the briefest moment, I saw something in the depths, a face, pale and distorted, eyes wide with an unearthly hunger. My heart nearly stopped as the face broke into a chilling smile. Then, with a blinding flash, the light vanished, leaving only darkness and a lingering echo of that haunting voice. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, as the night closed in around me. The well had shown me its true nature, and I realized, with dawning horror, that the worst was yet to come. The following days blurred together in a haze of dread and paranoia. The fog never lifted, clinging to the village like a ghostly shroud. I could feel the well's presence everywhere, an unrelenting pressure on my mind. The villagers kept their distance, whispering behind closed doors. They knew the well had its grip on me, and their fear was palpable. But my terror ran deeper, for I knew something from the well had followed me home. It started with the small things, objects misplaced, cold spots in the house, and the sensation of being watched. I could no longer ignore the signs. The coin, which I had kept out of a sense of morbid curiosity, seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Whenever I touched it, a chill seeped into my bones, and faint whispers echoed in my ears. At night, the sounds grew louder, morphing into hushed conversations and eerie laughter. Shadows danced on the walls, figures just beyond recognition. Sleep became impossible, as every creak and groan of the old house felt like a prelude to something sinister. The worst was the dreams, or rather, the nightmares. In these dreams, I was trapped in the village square, the fog so thick it felt like a suffocating blanket. The well stood before me, its mouth gaping like a hungry maw. And then, from the depths, came the voices, pleading, crying, and accusing. They told stories of betrayal, of wishes gone horribly wrong, of lives taken as payment. Among them was the voice I had heard on that fateful night, the one that had called my name. It spoke of promises and debts, of a curse that could not be undone. Each morning, I woke with a jolt, drenched in sweat, the voice's accusations ringing in my ears. Desperate for answers, I sought out the old woman who had warned me at the well. It took days of searching through the fog-bound village before I found her in a small, dilapidated house on the outskirts. Her face was even more lined with age, eyes tired but sharp. She welcomed me without surprise, as if she had been expecting my visit. As I poured out my experiences, she listened in silence, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she sighed and leaned back in her chair, her gaze piercing through me. "You are marked," she said gravely. "The well does not let go easily. It grants wishes, yes, but it demands a price. And once you've made your wish, you're bound to it, into the well. The shadows you see, the voices you hear, they are the well's way of keeping you tethered, feeding off your fear and regret." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "But there must be a way to stop it," I pleaded. "To break the connection." She shook her head slowly. "No one escapes the well's grasp. The best you can do is survive, to resist its pull and refuse to make another wish. But know this, the well is patient. It waits for the right moment, the right weakness. And when it strikes, it is merciless." I left her home with a sinking heart, her words echoing in my mind. There was no escape, no way to undo the horror I had unleashed. The well had chosen me, and now, it would not rest until it had claimed what it was owed. That night, the fog seemed thicker than ever, the village swallowed in its ghostly embrace. As I lay in bed, the cold seeping into my bones, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. But now, they were not alone. A shadowy figure stood at the foot of my bed, its outline barely visible in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat as it slowly raised a hand, pointing toward the door. A compulsion stronger than fear gripped me, and I found myself rising from the bed, following the figure through the silent house. It led me to the front door, which swung open with a creak. Outside, the fog swirled ominously, and the figure beckoned me to follow. Heart pounding, I stepped out into the night. The village was eerily silent, the only sound the soft crunch of gravel underfoot. The figure led me through the empty streets, its form becoming more distinct with each step. It wore a tattered cloak, its face hidden in shadow. The air grew colder, the fog thickening, until we reached the village square. There, in the center, the well stood waiting, a dark sentinel in the mist. The figure stopped beside it, turning to face me. For the first time, I saw its eyes, pale and glowing, filled with an unholy hunger. A twisted smile spread across its face as it gestured toward the well. "It's time," the voice from my dreams whispered, its tone both inviting and menacing. My heart raced as I looked down into the abyss, the darkness seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The air crackled with anticipation, and I knew, with a sickening certainty, that the well was demanding its due. The figure reached out, its hand cold as ice, and I felt a pull, a force drawing me closer to the edge. As the figure's icy grip tightened around my arm, the fog thickened, cloaking the village in an oppressive gloom. The well's pull grew stronger, and the murmurs from its depths became a cacophony of voices, each one more desperate than the last. The pale eyes of the figure bore into me, a silent command urging me forward. My body moved of its own accord, feet shuffling toward the well's yawning mouth. Panic surged through me, but it was as if my will had been stripped away, leaving only a hollow shell. I reached the well's edge, my heart hammering in my chest. The darkness below seemed to pulse, alive with unseen movement. As I leaned over, the voices rose in a discordant chorus, pleading and demanding. "Join us," they whispered, the words wrapping around my mind like a vice. I could feel their despair, their anger, the weight of countless souls trapped within the well's grasp. The figure beside me remained silent, its presence a looming shadow at the periphery of my vision. The coin in my pocket grew unbearably cold, searing through the fabric. With a sudden burst of clarity, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the coin, its surface glinting ominously in the dim light. The figure's eyes followed my movement, a hint of anticipation flickering in their depths. I understood then, the well's gift was a curse, and the coin was the key. To make a wish was to forge a bond with the well, a bond that could only be broken by fulfilling its insidious demand. The realization brought a fresh wave of terror. There was no escape, only the inevitable descent into darkness. Desperate to resist, I tried to hurl the coin back into the well, but my hand froze mid-motion. The figure's cold grip tightened, and a voice, smooth and insidious, slithered into my mind. you cannot resist. The well has chosen you. My body shuddered, caught in a battle between my will and the dark force that sought to claim me. The air around me grew thick, suffocating, as the voices from the well rose to a fever pitch. The ground beneath my feet seemed to tremble, and the world blurred at the edges. My vision tunneled, narrowing to the well's gaping maw, and the void within. In a final act of defiance, I threw the coin with all my might. Time seemed to slow as the coin arced through the air, spinning in the dim light before plunging into the depths. The well emitted a deafening roar, the ground shaking with its fury. The figure released its hold, and I stumbled back, breathless. For a moment, silence reigned, the air heavy with anticipation. Then, from the darkness, a pale hand reached out, grasping the well's edge. Another followed, and then another, as shadowy forms began to emerge from the depths. One by one, the souls of the damned clawed their way out, their faces twisted in agony. They surrounded the well, their hollow eyes fixed on me. The figure stood among them, its face no longer hidden. It was a twisted reflection of my own, a visage of despair and torment. The realization hit me like a blow. These were the souls trapped by the well's curse, each one bound by a wish made in desperation. And now, they were free, but at a terrible cost. The well had taken my wish and twisted it, using my desperation to release its captives. As the last of the souls climbed out, the ground beneath the well split open with a thunderous crack. The fog swirled violently, and the air filled with an ear-splitting shriek. The well's power waned, its hold on the village broken, but the price had been paid. The souls, freed from their torment, turned to me with expressions of gratitude and sorrow. The figure that wore my face approached, its eyes filled with a strange compassion. "You have freed us," it whispered, "but you cannot escape your fate. The well always demands a soul." Before I could react, the ground gave way, and I fell into the darkness. The voices of the freed souls faded, replaced by a deafening silence. Cold enveloped me, and I felt myself being pulled down, deeper and deeper. In the distance, a faint light flickered, growing brighter as I descended. The realization dawned on me like a cold splash of water. I was to take their place. The well had claimed its due. As the light engulfed me, the weight of the curse settled into my bones, and I understood the full horror of my fate. The well had taken my soul, and in exchange, it had freed the others. But now, it was my turn to haunt the depths, to become another voice in the chorus of the damned, warning those who might follow. The light grew blinding, and then, there was nothing. Only darkness, and the echoing laughter of the well, as it sealed my fate forever. The end. Subscribe for more true scary stories. Thanks for watching.